Hello, 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 welcome back. Yes, How to D&D. This is the weekly Lost Mine of Phandelver Dungeon Master tutorial. Let's see how my voice holds up. Now, as you can see, there is a map out. That means there will be some demonstration, but as I always do, I'm going to be doing a slide presentation and then I'm going to answer questions. And then once I've done that, we're going to go to the battle mat and grid and maps and miniatures, and I will demonstrate some different aspects of the game, and hopefully you will get the information you require. Now, hello Dan, how are you doing? Dan is a patron and probably one of the longest standing patrons that I have, and I do appreciate him. It's the patrons who make this class continue and ensure that there's something, there's some money coming in to keep funding it, essentially, and I really do appreciate that. Mikach Getter, I think it is. Hello. Well, hopefully you do get some pointers. Norik, hello Norik, how are you? Welcome to the live stream. But in any case, I have a lot of stuff to cover. I have a poll running. Feel free to take place. I'll take part, and make sure you have some questions to ask, because I will do the quick Q&A after the presentation. But other than that, let's get straight into the process of making sure that everything is working correctly, and into our actual presentation for today, which is all about the ruins of Thundertree. All right, here we go. Hi, welcome to How to D&D. My name is Fred Weller, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, because I usually do talk about Dungeons and Dragons. What is the topic for today? Well, the Lost Mine of Phandelver, Dungeon Master tutorial. So if you're a player, you probably shouldn't be here. If you're a Dungeon Master, you're in the right place. This is Lesson 8, The Ruins of Thundertree. Why have I placed it at the end? I'm going to explain more about why I've made this the last lesson rather than the first lesson or the middle lesson or anything like that. It'll become more clear as I go. Now, what is going to be covered today? My overview is I'm going to explain about finding the ruins of Thundertree. I'm going to talk about the Westernmost Cottage, the Blighted Cottages, the Brown Horse, the Droids Watch. There is the Blighted Farmhouse, the Ruined Store, the Dragon's Tower. Of course, we've got to talk about that. The Old Smithy, the herbalist shop, the town square. You might want to just skip over that, but don't want to in this case. The old Garrison, the Weaver's Cottage, the dragon cultists, and I always have some miscellaneous recommendations for you when I run these sorts of things. So hopefully they will be useful to you. Now, my objectives is I will explain all of this today. I'm going to explain everything. I'm going to demonstrate a lot of this. I can't demonstrate everything, and I want you to participate. So make sure you have some dice ready. You probably want at least a 20-sided dice, possibly 2, maybe 3. I mean, look, make sure you have some dice ready, because I often get people to participate in these things. I can't pull you into the stream, but I'm hoping that it will be possible in the future. Anyway, I'm going to refer you to D&D Beyond, where you can get the Lost Mine of Phandelver adventure for Dungeons & Dragons 5e for free. You get the entire adventure, okay? Don't have to pay a cent. It's online. And then you can also get all of the images for free. You can get all the stat blocks for free. You can get all of the high resolution maps for the players and the dungeon masters for free. It doesn't cost you a thing. And that's one of the best things that Wizards of the Coast has ever done, as far as I'm concerned. The Ruins of Thundertree. The map location itself, I would say, is medium sized. 13 locations that we deal with. Of course, the one location of note is definitely location 7, which we will get into. Now, you'll find that this is actually a very large location. If you look at it, the scale actually shows that each square represents 10 feet, not 5 feet. So that means that a lot of these places are significantly larger than they initially appear when you first look at them. Which also means that if you try to print out a map for this thing, it's going to be way too large to deal with, and it's probably going to cost you quite a bit of money as well. Okay. Finding the ruins of Thundertree. How can we do that? How can we get our players to achieve this? Now, the pre-made character sheet for the Folk Hero Fighter background has the parents living in the village of Thundertree, or they used to, okay? Which is now, it's just full of lots of monsters, and there's now a dragon residing there in the ruins. And essentially this folk hero is supposed to go and dispatch the dragon. That is the goal. So actually pretty easy if you're using a pre-made character. Also problematic, particularly if the person playing the fighter wants to go there too soon. And it's not, unfortunately, it's not like the Ruins of Thundertree is a secret, but we'll get more into that. Marina Dendrada, I believe it is, from the slave pens in the Red Brand hideout, can also offer a reward to them when they go through that location in the form of a hidden location in the Ruins of Thundertree where there is a necklace for the players to actually claim. So there's another way to get them there if you want to use that as another point of entry. Quillen Elderleaf can also suggest visiting Rudolph the druid in the Ruins of Thundertree for any kind of information they might want. Now he can give information on locations, but potentially other things as well. So they might wind up looking for the Ruins of Thundertree simply to track down this druid. Now that might be because what they really want to know is where is Wave Echo Cave or where is Cragmore Castle. Now the Ruins of Thundertree is in fact not a secret. So it's not like nobody knows where it is. They do actually know where it is. It's just that people don't venture there because the place is way too dangerous. It's full of all sorts of horrible things. The simplest way to encourage your player characters to seek out the Ruins of Thundertree is to actually have Venomfang the Dragon attack Phandalin and carry off, say, a small farm animal for food, and then they can follow the direction the dragon flies back to the Ruins of Thundertree. And you've pretty much got them there. So it's actually not that difficult. There's plenty of ways of getting them to this location should you want to do that. But do you really want to do that? That's the real question. Area 1. The Westernmost Cottage. I'm going to say this is not a particularly exciting location. All of the advice that I give you on these locations is not supposed to duplicate what's already in the adventure. I'm going to try to give you stuff that is actually outside of the adventure. Twig blights are probably one of the most boring fights you could possibly have, and there's a lot of twig blights in this location, and the first time they come across them will probably be in this particular cottage. Even with a large group, even a large group of twig blights is really no challenge. So if the player characters are cutting their way through these monsters fairly quickly, you might want to remove them completely from the location and just skip it. These twig blights will try to avoid the party or party of player characters and flee if needed. It's not the sort of thing they would normally do. It's like there's only a couple here. They're not going to go targeting the player characters because they've got nothing to venture from this, So it's probably not really a fight as such. If anything, they're probably going to be hiding and trying not to be detected. Otherwise, they're going to get mulched. Area 2, the Blighted Cottages. This is a little bit different. Things might look a little bit different here. If the player characters have the ability to speak with plants or the spell speak with plants, then, and you can refer to that spell actually on page 277 of the player's handbook, there's a chance they might discover the creatures are hungry and they just want food and they want to avoid a battle if they can. And so if the players were just to feed these twig blights, there would be no battle whatsoever, and they would go about their own business. There's no real effective way to employ a twig blight in a combat, unfortunately. But generally, they don't fight to the death. They flee when necessary. That's the easiest way to describe what to do with these things. They don't have any special abilities or anything like that. The most effective method for dealing with a twig blight is to wave a flaming torch at them, light a fire, or use fire spells, as this generally scares them off straight away. They don't want to be anywhere near fire. And yes, a flaming torch will only do 1 point of fire damage, but that doesn't matter. Twig blights do not like fire. If the player characters search the cottage, allow them to find the old chest without a perception check, in my opinion, because it's an easy check anyway, so why bother with a DC 10? If they search, they find it. End of story. The next location, this is Area 3, the Brown Horse. The Brown Horse is not, in fact, actually a brown horse. It is it's something else. Basically an old ale house, basically. The most effective way to employ the ash zombies in this location is to have them attack multiple player characters in melee. And this is to benefit from the ash puff effect as much as possible, because the more they engage over a wider area rather than targeting a single individual, the more damage you can do. The best way to deal with the ash zombies is for the player characters is using the turn undead ability, or even destroying them with some of the paladin smites, keeping your distance, or even sacred flame. That sacred flame cantrip may be coined Sacred Miss, but in fact it's perfect for zombies, because zombies have such a low dexterity modifier, so therefore their dexterity save is very poor as well. So they're probably going to fail that, and so you'll be successful. Also, some paladins do have the ability to deal with turning undead as well. Now, Area 4. Area 4 is like our first safe haven. This is the Droids Watch. And also probably the first time they will come across potentially an ally in this location. Role-playing Rudolph the Droid is on page 31 to 32. I would just play him as a friendly, helpful hippie. I was actually thinking of Jimi Hendrix. If anybody's ever seen an interview with Jimi Hendrix, I was thinking it would be kind of fun to play him like that, because Jimmy was very much a hippie, and it's the only way that I could think of playing this character. I do not have a video on my channel describing how to roleplay this character, unfortunately. And you're probably wondering, like, why, Fred? Why did you never put one together? And the reason is, I think the character is boring, and I know it's basically a info dump. That's really what that droid is all about, and nothing more. And so I didn't feel like it had any kind of serious weight. I think my best contribution is play the druid like Jimi Hendrix, just to make it more interesting. Okay. The small house is intended to be a safe haven for the player characters to rest in when required. But even though the house is designed and built and set up so it can keep pretty much everything out, it's not going to keep out the dragon. If the dragon knows that they are around and knows that they're in this building, this is not a good place to be, okay? It's not going to work. I know some of your players are probably going to think this is this isn't fair, but seriously, it's not going to keep out a green dragon. Area 5, the Blighted Farmhouse. I just wanted to refer you to my previous recommendations with regard to the twig blights from Area 2, the Blighted Cottages. I don't think there's anything more that I can add to this location. Again, I just feel like it's another collection of fodder for the player characters to smash their way through. Area 6, this is the Ruined Store. This gets a bit more interesting. The best way to deal with the webs is to burn them away with a torch or another source of fire. Even something like firebolt would be suitable because it does ignite things. Just to avoid having to move through them, because moving through webs is always a bad idea, and I'm sure even inexperienced players will figure this out. I recommend, if the player characters attempt to push or move their way through the webs, ignore the DC 10 strength athletics check, because it's an easy check, so why are you making it? And increase the DC to 12. I've only increased it by 2, but that's a little bit better, rather than setting it as an easy DC. An easy DC, I don't think you want to employ that. You want a real task to perform, rather than, okay, it's easy to actually brush my teeth, so let's have a DC 10, what would that be? Dexterity check to brush my teeth? I mean, frankly, it's silly. So just increase the DC. The most effective way to employ the giant spiders is to have them use the web ability from the ceiling or the walls to snare up your player characters first, before moving in to bite and feed on their prey. Now, don't get too worried if they all get webbed up and bitten and wind up falling to 0 hit points, because the spider bite doesn't necessarily kill them. It will just make them unconscious, and they'll get webbed up and used as food later on, which means you can give them the opportunity to try to escape later. So it's not the end of the world if they all wind up getting munched by giant spiders initially, and and they lose that fight because they can be webbed up and just wake up later. But 2 giant spiders for potentially level 4 or 5 characters is probably not going to stop them in the slightest. The best way to deal with the giant spiders is to avoid getting webbed, for one thing. That means moving back and forth behind cover. Getting up close is probably going to be a little bit difficult. Burning the webs away completely first before you engage with the spiders, or using some sort of area effect fire spell, like Burning Hands. They're probably not going to have access to Fireball at this point, but Burning Hands would certainly be fairly effective. And you can refer to page 220 of the Player's Handbook for the spell Burning Hands. Okay, you are waiting for the key location, the one that we're hoping is going to be our climax. The Dragon's Tower. That's right, there is a dragon here, as you know. I know it's here, you know it's here. I recommend ignoring the adventure advice on the dragon. Like all of the stuff in the adventure itself that it gives, just ignore the whole lot. It's not going to be useful to you. Not unless you want your big bad to wind up coming off as being a pussy. Role-playing Venomfang the Young Green Dragon is on page 32 of this adventure. There's also a video on my YouTube channel. Or you could just play the Young Green Dragon as a manipulative schemer. So if you've ever come across somebody who's very manipulative and sort of schemes, can't trust them, that's what you're trying to do. The most effective way to employ the dragon Venomfang is to make sure that it's on the roof of the tower, keeping an eye on the surroundings. Or using birds as sentries, which a green dragon would do, to keep an eye on its location should anybody venture towards the tower, so the birds can come and then whisper in the ear of the dragon, waking it up, and so it's now not going to be surprised. Rather than having the dragon inside the tower and sleeping, which is very tempting to do because often dragons spend the vast majority of their time sleeping, but even if they are sleeping, there's usually some sort of minion or guardian who keeps a watch over them to make sure that they don't get disturbed, or somebody isn't stupid enough to walk into their lair or location and take their shit. I mean, essentially that's what we're looking at. So birds and other little creatures would certainly be coaxed into assisting a dragon, unless of course they all want to die. If the player characters approach the dragon without declaring their presence, it can fly above using its poison breath, which is the most effective way to employ a dragon, is to always be flying and using the breath weapon. Fly overhead if you don't have access to the poison breath anymore because it hasn't recharged. Flying overhead, grabbing the player character that you want to pick up, and then fly up into the air and drop them to their death. I mean, essentially that's the easiest way. You're using essentially the bird and the snail technique, where they pick up the snail, fly up into the air and drop it onto a hard surface, and the snail cracks open. You're doing essentially the same with the player characters. You can also make flyby attacks, but here's the thing, is they don't have flyby ability where you can fly past, make an attack, and not get an attack of opportunity on them. So you need to be very careful about using that, if, in my opinion. It would certainly be the last resort as far as I'm concerned. But never let the dragon fight on the ground. It's probably the silliest thing you could possibly do with a dragon. Dragons don't fight on the ground. They know, they're smart enough, even a green dragon, that fighting in the air is the best strategy. If the player characters declare their presence and intentions, the dragon can be bribed, bargained with, or even deceived with the right approach. But intimidating the dragon will just lead to the dragon attacking the characters. So yeah, if they start to try that one, nah, it's not going to work. But you could certainly bribe, bargain, or deceive the dragon. Dragons are hard to deceive, but you can still give it a go. Venomfang values treasures such as, and favors, like not just treasures, but the favors are a big thing for a green dragon, and certainly Venomfang would be in the same place. Dragons like to control others. So if you were to be the dragon's like little minion or spy or something like that, dragons like that a lot. They also like emeralds, wood carvings, musical instruments, sculptures of humanoids, and you can find a lot of this information in the monster manual for Dungeons & Dragons 5e on page 85. A young green dragon will likely TPK or kill characters if they are, I would say, level 4 potentially or lower. It is possible to defeat a young green dragon at level 4, but certainly if they are level 4 or lower, certainly level 3 and 2, you're really struggling, okay? But level 5 characters will be fine with good tactics and plenty of good luck. Other than that, I wouldn't actually throw the dragon at them until level 5. It's probably not a good idea. Dragons work best in a game when the players and the dungeon master accept a simple fact. That's dungeon masters and players, not just one or the other. You need to accept that failure and death is very likely when facing a dragon, because dragons are supposed to be a big deal. There is no humiliation. There is no thing that says, "Oh, you're terrible because your character died at the hands of a dragon." There is no thing to feel. You don't feel bad if a dragon kills the player characters. Like they're supposed to do that. They are dragons. There's a point. If they're going to die at any point, facing a dragon is the right place. Okay. We've talked about the dragon. A couple of other locations. Area 8, the Old Smithy. Refer to my previous recommendations on the ash zombies from Area 3 from the brown horse. I would consider allowing the player characters to claim some of the old tools left behind, such as, say, since it's an old smithy, there's probably going to be some tongs. I'm going to list a couple of things that you could put in here. It's not in the adventure, but these are things you would normally find in a smithy, and maybe these items still remain. 4 tongs, maybe a little bit rusty. 4 different sized forge hammers, 2 anvils, 2 whetstones, 4 different types of chisels, 3 different sizes of punches, and 2 cone mandrels. Each one would be a different size. You'll find that everything that I've listed with these multiples, they're usually going to be a slightly different size for a different purpose. And some players will find a use for them. Some will find them junk and won't be interested, but just to give it a bit of... flesh it out a little bit, make it a little bit more interesting. Okay, Area 9, the herbalist's shop. What can we say about this place? The gold necklace is covered extensively in the adventure, so I don't really need to add anything more to that. What I will say is this piece of jewellery could be used by the player characters to ask another question of Agatha the Banshee and Coneyberry. You know how they do that quest, and completing the quest is for Sister Gorell. But of course, the one question they really want to ask isn't the question the quest is all about. Do you know what I mean? They probably want to know, like, where is Gundren Rockseeker, or where is Cragmore Castle, or who is the Black Spider, or where is Wave Echo Cave? All those sorts of questions. And Agatha's not going to answer that question unless there's some sort of pretty jewellery involved. And this is that second chance that you can present for that. If you want to do that, that would be a good way of doing it. Okay. Probably one of the most common locations to be looked over as being like a waste of time and like what's going on here is Area 10, the town square. So what I've done is none of this you will find in the adventure, okay, because there's almost nothing there. This is all me. I found nothing on the hero Palin in the internet. That was there's nothing in the book, okay. So there's absolutely nothing. So what I thought would be a good idea is to replace Palin the hero with the backstory of a different hero that you may be aware of. I'm going to suggest using the Greek myth of Bellerothon. Oh, Bellerothon? God, sheesh, I can't say it today. Rather than the one they've named. Now you could keep the name the same, but what I want you to do is use all the additional information on the Greek myth, Bellerothon, shit, for the player characters to discover. Like if you need some sort of history check or information you want to reveal, this was probably the best way. And this hero battled a chimera to protect their location, and you can treat it the same way for Thundertree. consider adding a hidden compartment under the statue that holds a magic sword, Palin's magic sword in fact, or magic weapon, if the players decide to push the statue over. There is a little bit of mechanics already in the game that suggests how to do that and what you would do, and so I'm going to feed on that a little bit and say the reason for having to know that is because by doing so they reveal the secret compartment where there is the sword of this great hero has been stashed. Just a little extra just to make things a little bit more interesting. Yes, I know there are already magic items in this location, but really, does anybody need an axe that deals with wood? Okay. The Old Garrison. I'm going to refer my previous recommendations on the Ash Zombies from Area 3, the Brown Horse, again, because I don't think there's really anything I can do to add to this. This is just another slog fest with zombies, frankly, and not a particularly interesting one if you ask me. Just, there's a few. And instead of them just being a handful, there's slightly more than before. Area 12, the Weaver's Cottage. This essentially looks like and feels like a completely empty room with very much nothing going on. So what I've done is the broken loom is in the corner of the room. And so what I'm going to do is going to suggest some things around this broken loom that you can add to your game to sort of make it a bit more interesting. So the broken loom in the corner of the room can be repaired with a mending spell. If they have the mending spell, it's not broken so much that you couldn't use the mending spell. If the player characters or one of the player characters has proficiency in the carpenter's tools and has the tools, don't require a skill check to actually repair it. Just to say you repair the loom and now you have a non-broken loom. The loom could be used by another character if they like to weave and need a loom, or more likely could be sold for between about 10 to 20 gold pieces if they take it to say another town, even Phandelver or the city. You can sell it there and get a few coins for it. So just make it a little bit more interesting, because otherwise this location kind of feels like it's a waste of your time. Okay, the last location, Area 13, the Dragon Cultists. The cultists are hiding in the farmhouse, so use a contest between stealth checks, and in this case the cultists have a +1 to their 20-sided dice roll for the cultists, and you're going to compare this with the player characters trying to listen at the door for noise to hear them. They might be able to hear whispering, they might hear movement behind the door. They might not see anything, but they certainly could hear something. And you're going to get your player characters to either make a active perception check or use a passive perception check, whichever one you prefer. Role-playing the cultists and Favrik is on page 34 to 35, or you could just play Favrik like a telemarketing salesperson. You know those annoying people that ring you when you're in the middle of cooking your dinner and you really don't want to have to deal with them? I'm going to suggest that Favrik is probably a bit like that. The intention of the designers is to have the cultists in this location connect the adventure The Lost Mine of Phandelver with the Tyranny of Dragons storyline, but it offers no advice on how to do so. And so I'm going to come back to that because I do have some advice for you. In fact, I'm going to tell you right now. If you want to connect the two adventures, The Lost Mine of Phandelver with Horde of the Dragon Queen, I'm going to suggest run episode 1, 2 of Horde of the Dragon Queen after you've run The Lost Mine of Phandelver. Then run chapter or episode 7 and 8. Skip the middle and move straight into that. And what will you do? You're going to rename Greenest as Phandelver. And you're going to put a castle in Phandelver, and you're already pretty much done. Wasn't too much to actually do to solve that problem. For those of you who I knew are going to ask me that question, there is also a video that goes into a little bit more detail on my channel if you're really interested. Okay, I always have miscellaneous recommendations when I'm talking about these sorts of topics. So here are, and unfortunately I'm going to apologize now, there are a lot of recommendations here, and I'm going to do a great huge alteration to this adventure as well. Something that I think probably needed to happen from the very get-go. But ultimately it's up to you how you do this. Dealing with the aftermath of defeating Venomfang will complete the folk hero fighter's goal. Okay, achieve the Druid's quest and help find the location Wave Echo Cave. Like essentially, by dealing with Venom Fang, you achieve quite a bit. Okay, one of the player characters, the folk hero fighter, will achieve their goal. The Druid's request to get rid of the dragon will be completed. And then, of course, the Druid can then take them to Wave Echo Cave if they don't know where it is. Treasure in this location is pretty generous, so I don't think you need to do too much in terms of permanent magic items, but certainly add potions of healing if they need them. That's my suggestion to you. Awarding experience points for the monsters. You can, if they kill the monsters, they get the experience points. If they defeat the monsters, in other words, drive them off, bribe them, or have them flee, or they surrender, then that's fine. They have still awarded, should be still awarded all the experience points for that monster. The players gain a milestone for completing this area. Oh, sorry, don't gain a milestone for completing this area, unless the Dungeon Master has turned this location into a major quest location. So I'm going to say, if you were to run this particular part of the adventure as its own major quest, and you ran it when they were about level 5 after they've done everything else, I would allow them to complete this, go from level 5 to level 6. I wouldn't, if any other time, I would not suggest us assigning a milestone for completing this location. But if you turn it into a major location quest with a bit of tinkering on your part, then absolutely, because defeating a dragon is a big deal, and we want to reward that. But we also need to make the location interesting enough, because right now the only thing that's terribly interesting is in fact the dragon, and everything else is boring as. I recommend not running this adventure location till after everything else has been resolved. Because Venom Fang is much more threatening as a main villain than Nesnar the Black Spider, unfortunately. If the party gets to the ruins of Thundertree and they aren't level 4 or 5, consider removing these things. This is to stop them from getting absolutely trounced. Get rid of the dragon, get rid of the treasure hoard, get rid of the druid, get rid of the cultists, and you can bring them in later on. They could come back to this location when they're level 4 or 5, and then this is when they'll find the dragon is here with their treasure hoard, the druid's here, and the cultists are here. Otherwise, just leave. I mean, if you're level 1, 2, or 3, the ash zombies, some blights, and some spiders, probably not a big deal. Okay, they'll probably get through most of that. But it's not going to work with everything else there when they're at that level. Okay, here's where I'm going to give you some advice about making some adjustments to this location, because I feel like this location, it has promise, but it just needs some tweaking. Should the ruins of Thundertree be used after the main Lost Mine of Phandelver adventure goal, and you use it as a main adventure location, and you make it its own thing, I want you to increase the difficulty of the twig blights to a combination of the following. So anytime you see twig blights, you're going to replace them with some of these. Vine blights. Vine blights on page 32 of the monster manual. Much more interesting monster, and I think it's a much more interesting blight. You could replace some of these twig blights with a shambling mound. So where you have a location where there's a lot of twig blights, put a shambling mound in there. Shambling mounds are very much suitable for a level 4 or 5 character, and it's on page 270 of the monster manual, and it'll make a much more interesting fight. Something like the Awakened Tree could also be used to replace some of these twig blights, and you'll find the Awakened Tree on page 317 of the monster manual. And then lastly, woodwoads. Woodwoads, again, a much more interesting monster. You'll find it on page 198 of Volo's Guide to Monsters. And if you can't access it because you don't have that book, you should be able to find the stat block somewhere on the internet. I don't know for sure if the woodwoad is available for free on D&D Beyond, but I'm going to make those recommendations. The rest you probably already have if you have the monster manual. And that gives you pretty much all the things I think you'll need to know to run this adventure successfully and make it an interesting experience for you and your players. Please let me know in the comments section your experience of running the adventure so far, how things are going. Any questions you have, put them there as well. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. Okay, I'm not gone. but I do need some drink some water. And I will just shuffle around a little bit. Just give me a second, people. Okay. What age is Venom Fang? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I don't know. It doesn't say anywhere. Make it up. It just says it's young. So, yeah. Frankly, I don't think it matters. Okay, let me just go through the chat first. So I'll go back to my webcam and then I'll start doing some demonstration, people. So for those of you who are hoping for demonstration and you haven't seen any yet, that's right, because this is a 2-hour live stream. So there's plenty of time to get that done. And yeah, my eyes are working fine. So that's a bonus. So transition over. And let's have a look through the chat very quickly. Again, if you have questions, by all means, throw them in. I want to look at this poll too quickly because it gives me an idea of like who am I making this for? So, is this your first time being a dungeon master? 38% said yes. Okay. 50% said no. All right. Coming back into DMing, 6% out of 16 votes, and just watching 6%. Interesting. Good to know. Good to know. Well, I hope to. I'd like to think that I'm good at that. So for those of you who are hoping to see, I've run this before. This is the second time on YouTube, but the fifth time overall because I've done it in Lighthall as well. This class. Now I haven't made any major changes from last time. The only major changes to this particular lesson is the slides are now in 4K. Okay, so if you weren't aware, I am live streaming in 4K, so I have upgraded the slides, and that's all the time I had to try and get that done. So I just focused on that. Okay. Norik, I said hi to Norik already, and Dan is here, who's also a moderator and a patron. I just want to go through the chat really fast. If there's no questions, we're going straight into demonstration, people. Make sure you have your dice ready, because I'm going to be asking for you to roll some 20-sided dice. You're in Norway? Yep. I'm always surprised that there are people who are up so late watching my stuff. It's good, but I feel very sorry for you. The good news is that as the time zones change, daylight savings and stuff like that, then of course the time will change for everybody else. May improve things, might make it worse. Who knows? Yeah, Dan, I wasn't really expecting you to be here, but hey, yeah, twig blights still, even at level 2 or 3, are still pretty boring. I found them probably the most boring thing under the sun. They do feel very powerful when they dispatch these things, but yeah. Yeah, Fireball is, it depends what level you are to be able to do that. Adding some Eticaps with the spiders, yeah, you could. Eticaps could be here, but I feel like Eticaps are being smart enough, they would probably take over the location. And they would probably utilize the spiders to do this, so I just don't know that it would work. But yeah, it's your game. Like, not my game. It's your game. You do whatever you want to do with it. Yep. As I said, I'm not going to answer the question of what age is Venom Fang, because Venom Fang is as old as you feel Venom Fang should be. Okay. Hello, Jeeves. How's it going? I plan on running this soon, but I am replacing the Black Spider with a bad guy of my own making. I will rename the Black Spider nickname though. Okay, hey, so almost forgot. The best way to support this program continuing week after week is on Patreon. Now the reason being is you pay as little as $1 a month. You can pay more. There are no tiers. Okay, and you get all of the Dungeon Master handouts of everything that I talk about. Pardon me. So everything regarding the introduction, Goblin Arrows, the Cragmore Hideout, Redbrand Hideout, Phandalin, Cragmore Castle, Wave Echo Cave, and this location, All of that has got some very detailed notes for Dungeon Masters that you can download off Patreon as a patron, plus other things. But recently what we did is we turned the Black Spider, Nesnar, into a Droider. For those of you who want to run Nesnar as a Droider, either to follow up after the Lost Mine of Phandelver, that adventure, or if you're in a situation where you would like to switch out the Drow and have a Droider being the Black Spider, then you can do that, because there's now a stat block for patrons up there, and you can download the JPEG. There's also a link to it. I don't know that I have included the link necessarily to that, but if I haven't, you'll let me know. Okay, so if you want to use a different stat block for Nesnar the Black Spider, basically what we've done is we've taken the Droider and we've smashed all the spell casting that Nesnar had into that and made a few adjustments. So it will save you probably about an hour and a half of work if you do it yourself. Maybe a little bit less. Do you know what I mean? Just to let you know. And the other way of, supporting this particular class is super chats and super stickers. Anyway, let me just go through here. Now. Yep, shaking things up. Mitcha Gitu. Is it Mitcha Gitu? I hope I got your name right. I'm thinking about having the cultists chanting the opening to AC/DC Thunderstruck as a homage to Venom Fang in the castle. Yes, your PCs will attract to the location. I think that's very, very cute. And I've not no judgment. I think it's hilarious. Why not do it? Absolutely. Dungeons and Chronics. Hello, Dungeons and Chronics. How's it going? IXXX. I feel like can I just call you Triple X, because Triple X is a cooler name, I think. So we're going to call you Triple X. How's that sound? You'll tell me if that's inappropriate, but I think Triple X is fine. And how's it going? Overboard Miniature Gaming. Now, Joe, Overboard Miniature Gaming, has his own YouTube channel. He's also he does maps, miniatures, terrain, book reviews, product reviews. And he does a lot of stuff that nobody else does. So you should check him out at some point. He's also a patron and also a moderator in here today. And it's not his first time being a dungeon master. I know this. Hello, Samuel von Brewster. Brewer, sorry. Brewster. How did I get Brewster? Samuel is also a patron, supports me on Patreon to make sure all of this stuff continues. Fred, glad to finally catch a live stream. Okay, been missing you. I have been missing you too. I mean, you've sent me a few messages via Patreon, and I have read them and hopefully responded. I hope I have. How's it going, Leatherface? Hello. Hello from the US. Just purchased the starter set Lost Mine of Phandelver. That's amazing. I hope that you aren't now upset that you could have got the whole thing for free. If the physical product is what you wanted, I don't think that the original starter set is going to be purchasable for too much longer. I think what Wizards of the Coast is trying to do is get rid of the original starter set and bring in this new one, which at some point I will talk about more. I just don't have access to it. It's actually been quite difficult for me to access that particular, is it Dragons of Stormwreck Isle box set? And I'm hoping it will be possible to get a hold of it after Christmas. If it happens before Christmas, great. But yes, it's been really, really problematic. First time being a DM. Oh, I feel really sorry for you. Look, hang around, baby, because I do this every week. So this program is here for you, to support you through that process. And we have Dungeon Master Prep tomorrow. We're doing NPCs where we build our own NPCs, and that might help you as well. And we also have a program around building characters. Now that might help with your players who are building characters for the very first time, if they decide to do that and don't use a pre-made. And we also have a rules live stream this week as well, going over I think we're doing the basics of combat this week. So there's a lot of programs designed to wrap around you and help you as much as possible. And you will be implementing a lot of what I've mentioned. Good. Great. I'm glad to hear it. Norik, yes, welcome to the task. The hardest job at the table. I ran the Black Spider as a Droid before, and the players that were familiar with the module were mind blown. Good. A lot of fun. Yeah, he's a Droid. That'll really kick things up. Okay, look, I've got through the chat. So it's time to do some demonstration. Okay, that's why you're here. So I have a battle map here. I thought probably the easiest way to do this is to get people to start rolling me some dice. I'm going to roll initiative. And look, here are our player characters right here. And I wanted to sort of play out and show you what's likely to happen when you deal with a certain location. Like, you know, I mean, what realistically is likely to happen? I could do the spiders. That would probably make life a lot easier. If I could eliminate them, like I can plant that there. But we also need to do the blights. So what I'll do is we'll deal with the spiders first. I'm going to push the dragon away. I know you're like wanting to see a fight between the dragon and these player characters, but it's asking too much, people. Right now, well, let's just deal with the smaller things. I've actually already shown people what a fight between the dragon would look like in the past. So it's not. So this here is my I guess my panel. It's a battle pad, and it allows me to write down the initiative of everybody. And then once I've done that, I can then put them into order. So I want to show you the process. So I suppose what we could do, should I read out and set the scene for you, since we're going to be dealing with the spider location. So I'll move that out of the way. I'll see how I do. I mean, I'm losing my voice, so it might not be as great as you might like. But here we go. So, an intersection near the middle of the village, there is a narrow, winding lane up to a steep hill to the north. Directly to the south is a ruined building that might have been a store or a work shop. Webs stretch across this lane from the building to the trees on the north side of the road. So as they are walking along, they come across this. Okay? And let's just assume that for whatever reason, somebody decides to poke their head in there without making sure to get rid of all the webs first. So we're going to go straight into a fight. It's probably now the only reason that I'm doing it that way is ultimately to demonstrate the process of initiative. Would there be surprise? Well, what I can do is I can roll stealth for each one of them and show you what that would look like. And we can actually do a stealth check for our spiders as well, since that would probably be suitable in the situation. So we have a wizard, a rogue, a fighter, and a cleric. I've just picked 4. And the DM will be represented by the spiders. Okay, and I'm going to do stealth. Stealth it is. Okay. So, let's put that over. Will I put that there? Will I put that there? No, I won't. Because what I want to do is actually, when I roll these stealth checks, I want to show you how the stealth checks are rolled. Okay, stealth. Okay. Now, in this case, the only one who's actually rolling stealth is the spiders, because they're probably the ones hiding, right? Stealth, spider. The giant spiders. So you're going to take a 20-sided dice. Here's my little tray. If you decide that the situation is appropriate to be assigning something like initiative, feel free to do so. You don't have to do so. But if you think it would be appropriate to assign advantage, then go for it. You'll find that the giant spider is freely available on D&D Beyond, so you can get access to the stat block. So if you are concerned that if you're running it digitally and you're not using the book itself, you don't have to worry about any of that. Now, what is the actual modifier that we use with the giant spider? It's probably not completely obvious when you look at this thing, because it doesn't have, it has stealth right down the bottom there. But if you ever find under skills it doesn't state stealth, in the case of the spider it does, you're just going to use the dexterity modifier. Okay. But right now the spider has a dexterity of 7. We roll our 20-sided dice. You could decide to make this a passive check, which means you would just add 10 to it. But if you want to roll dice, then roll your dice. I got a 3, which is very bad. 3. That there is going to come to 7 and 3. It's 10. So let us assume that the player characters, when they enter this location, are at least level 4. Okay? So what we would do is we would take our passive check for each of our characters, and we're going to compare them with the check that the spider made for stealth. And as you can see, the wizard got a 14, the rogue has got a 10, the cleric has got a 13, and the fighter has got a 14. So they would all be able to realize, there are actually spiders there. I can see some dark thing moving around in the webs. This is probably one of the reasons why it would have been better to use a passive stealth check, so you don't have to worry about rolling really low. Because otherwise, stealth monsters that don't actually stealth are kind of suck. Okay, so there's some surprise involved because they have detected the spider. Okay, as long as you get equal to or greater than, you are successful. So everybody in the party is aware there are spiders there. Okay, so we're going to open it up to our initiative, which I promised I said I would do this. So we'll do some initiative. Let me just rub that little sucker out. There's my little rubber. I'm hoping that people are rolling some dice because I'm going to need your dice rolls very shortly. Initiative. And so with initiative, what I'm going to do is the 20-sided dice that the players roll, I will use when I'm doing this. I'm going to work my way through from the top, and hopefully people have started rolling some dice. If you haven't, I really need you to start rolling some dice. It would be really helpful if you did. If you don't, I will roll the dice myself. Does that seem fair enough? I think that does. I'm hoping that you will assist me in this process. Okay, well, you've got dice. Cool. Start rolling them and give me some numbers. I'm going to start off with the wizard. The wizard has a +2. So that's our initiative. And I'm rolling for you rolled a 4. Okay, so 2 and 4. So you're rolling this is a 20-sided dice for your initiative. So you roll this thing, and you're going to add that number to whatever that's here. In this case, I'm using Dan's number, which is the 4. That comes to 2 plus 4 is 6. So our wizard would have an initiative of 6. So I mark that down, and then I will rub that out. And the next one is, let's do the fighter, which is, the fighter's got a -5 on the pre-made character sheet. Now, what did I get in terms of numbers? Norik, you rolled a 7. Thank you. I'm going to use that for the fighter. So you rolled your 20-sided dice. You got a 7. So -1 has come to 6. So I put that beside the 6 beside the fighter, and then our next one will be Leatherface, who got an 8. In this case, I'm going to use the cleric has got a -5 to their initiative as well. So I'm going to use your Leatherface. I'm going to use your 8. Just to make it easier. So -1, an 8 for the cleric comes out as a 7. The cleric got an initiative of 7. And the last one is the rogue. The rogue has a 3 for their initiative. So going to probably do a little bit better. 3. And what was the 20-sided dice roll that you made? So we're using a 20-sided dice, Dungeons and Chronics. So if there's 20 sides to it and you see a 20 on it, you've got the right dice. If it doesn't have a 20 on it, that's the wrong dice. Samuel, thank you. That's a 14. I'm going to use that. Okay, so you're going to have to keep rolling 20-sided dice, people, because I'm going to keep needing numbers. Okay, all right. So 14 for our rogue, and you're going to get 17. So 3 plus 14 off the 20-sided dice, and we get that. Okay, so we're doing pretty well so far. I'm marking those all down. And then somebody has hopefully rolled for my spiders, because my spiders need to have an initiative as well. And I see that Dungeons and Chronics has rolled a 9 for our spiders. Now, what is the initiative for our spider? You'll notice that on the stat block for the giant spider, there's no section that says initiative and what the number is. When this happens, you're going to use your dexterity modifier, which is not the big number. It's a small number in the brackets, and it says +3. So we're going to be using a 3. Spiders are pretty quick, so we're going to use that in this case. Yep. So we take the 9. He rolled on a 20-sided dice, get 12. And that is those are all our numbers. Now, once we've done that, what do we do? Well, first off, we're going to take all the numbers that we've made, and we're going to slip that over there without knocking our little fella off the board completely. Okay, so here is the different numbers for our different characters. Thank you for continuing to roll 20s, people. I do appreciate it. So the highest number goes at the top. So the highest number is the 14, so that means the rogue needs to be at the top. Put the rogue at the top, because they got 14. The next highest number is 12. That's the DM, that's the spiders going next. After that is the 7, which is the cleric. After that, we've got the wizard and the fighter. It honestly doesn't matter who goes first, because essentially there's no trade-off between the dungeon master or the players, so you can decide amongst yourselves. If you feel if the wizard wants to go before the fighter, let's let the players decide. It doesn't matter, really, ultimately in the end. Okay, so there we have it. We have our initiative figured out, which means the rogue is going to get to make an attack before everybody else. Now, for the sake of my sanity and not having to work out all of the attacks for these different characters, since I and my assistants here with the 20-sided dice are rolling away probably pretty quickly, what I want to do is, instead trying to figure out exactly what the level 4 modifiers will be, I want you to treat all the characters as being level 1, just for the sake of my sanity, okay? Otherwise, it's going to be just too hard. So here we go. So rogue. We've got our rogue. And we have to make a decision about what we are going to attack with. Like how's that going to look? What sort of attack? Since they get to go first, well, right up close, it probably makes sense, since we're right up close. This map is not to scale, by the way, people. So each square should be, this whole space should be twice the size it really is. So it's just for positioning. So let's just say the rogue is right up next to the spider in this situation, okay? Maybe it isn't, but it is, but ultimately that's probably the easiest way to deal with that. What sort of attack would you make? Will you make a close quarter attack? And on our character sheet for the rogue, they have a short sword. Now the short sword has a +5 for the attack, +5, and our damage is going to be a 6-sided dice, which we will roll very shortly, okay, and we're going to add 3. So let's see if we hit first. Giant spiders aren't that hard to hit, so let's see if we actually strike. Being level 1, we don't get an awful lot, unfortunately, but we do get something. So we'll do our best to hopefully mess it up. Now, we don't have surprise, we don't have advantage, we don't have an ally within 5 feet, so we don't get sneak attack. Kind of unfortunate, but that's how it works. So roll your 20-sided dice, get your players to do this. They take their modifier. I got a 4, 5, comes to 9. The giant spider's armor class is probably significantly higher than that, unfortunately. I believe it is a armor class of 14. You have to get equal to or greater than, so we do miss. So we don't get to do anything, unfortunately. Okay, that's our first round. Now we're into the same round, round 1, no surprise, and it's now the spider's turn. And this is where things can get really tricky, because spiders aren't actually very easy to deal with. Because you know how I said I want you to use the web ability? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do, is we're going to use the web ability. The web ability doesn't actually do any damage. All it does is web up a target. Okay, so let's just rub that out. Spider web. Web. Okay. Each spider can do this thing. It's an attack roll, and we target one creature. If we are successful, great. So, it is a +5 for our spider. We've got 2 spiders, so we'll make 2 attacks. There we go. I will roll, instead of rolling 1 dice, they don't have advantage. They can be seen. We're going to just roll both 20-sided dice at the same time. If you don't have multiple 20-sided dice, I suggest you just do that. Or did we have enough people rolling 20s that I don't have to roll those dice in this case? Looks like I have lots and lots of dice rolls to work with. So actually, we'll just do that. Where am I going to start with? Where did I finish? 9, 13, 11. Dan, I'm going to just use your point of reference. So you got an 11. So we're going to have this one try to web here in this direction. Now the web works on only a single target. So it's not a cone or anything like that. You just pick a target and that's what you go for. So we're going to go after the rogue in this time. We're going to try and web up the rogue. Yep. And Dan, you rolled an 11. So we'll go 11 off our D20 dice roll. And then the second attack, this spider here, we're going to have this spider clamber out over the top for their turn. And in this position here, it is going to, over the top, it's going to shoot and try to web up our wizard at the back there. Because why not? Wizards look really tasty, don't they? And it should be significantly easier to do if we're lucky enough. The range is only 30 feet, so if you go beyond 30 feet, it's not going to be very effective. You wind up with disadvantage. We're not going with disadvantage in this case, so we're all right. Leatherface, I'm taking your 17. Okay, so rogue, 16. Our wizard winds up having to deal with being hit with a 22. That's going to succeed. Our rogue's a different story. Like the armor class of a rogue, usually they're pretty good at doing that sort of thing. I believe the rogue has an armor class of 14, unfortunately, so we are successful with that. So we now have 2 characters that are now webbed. Webbed. They can try to break free on their turn. That's half the party now webbed up, okay? But it's all right because we have some other characters that will be able to take their turn, and they will. Thank you for rolling all these dice, people. I do appreciate it. So our next person in the list. Now, our spiders can move position if they want to, but in most cases, it probably wouldn't make much sense. A spider can move out, web this character, and then go back into hiding if it wanted to, like that, making it harder to target it, which would probably be sensible. This spider will probably, because it's up close, webbing the target. I mean, essentially, you can still attack when you are restrained. Dan, I'm going to web the wizard because I love wizards, and so I'm going to screw up the wizard as soon as I possibly can. Okay? I show no mercy to the class that I love. It must die first. That's how it has to be. So now let's do the attack for the cleric. What has a cleric got? Cleric's got a few different things they could potentially do. For anybody who is unaware, you have a bunch of spells that you can cast as a cleric. Should we cast a spell or should we make an attack? I mean, that's the first question, right? As we could go with Bless. Bless is a good spell. Might be a bit hard for me to track all of it. Or we could go with, let's just make an attack. Can we get in there and make an attack of some kind? Yep. That might be another solution. You certainly don't want to use something like Sacred Flame. So I'll tell you what, we're going to use our Warhammer. Actually, we can use our throwing axe. We'll throw an axe at it. We don't have power word kill, Samuel. No power word kill. So a throwing axe for this character is a +4. That's our cleric. You can throw through the door. Not a problem. That can be done. And then you could also, if you wanted to, you could potentially ask those players could try to break somebody free who's been webbed, rather than leaving them. Now, it doesn't state that in the rules as such, but I would just allow it if you want them. If they want to do that, then let them do that. Okay? And then our damage would be 2 plus a 6-sided dice. So we'll grab a 6-sided dice and 2 for the damage if we hit the spider. If you're playing the game, you do not need to use cover. If you want to use cover rules, then that's fine. But if you don't want to, then don't use them. Okay? So I throw through here with my hand axe with the cleric. Got an 18. Sorry, I didn't take somebody's dice roll. I apologize. I rolled an 18. Okay, that's 22. 22 has got to be greater than or equal to the armor class of a spider. Spider's armor class is 14. Even if you were to apply cover in a situation like this, and given that you're dealing with throwing past a small character to a large character, a large monster, you probably don't need to worry about dealing with cover in this case. There's like a single sentence in the rules that talks about the size of a monster, and if the size of the monster is too big, it doesn't benefit from cover. And so, but it won't make any difference, because whatever cover bonus it would get wouldn't be that much. So we're going to hit the thing, okay? It's gonna take some damage. So we roll our damage dice, which is the 6-sided dice. And I got a 3. I'm going to add that to our 2. So you do 5 damage from the hand axe, which of course is now sticking out of the spider or lying on the ground. One of those. Yep. That's not going to kill the spider, but it is certainly reduced its hit points. Yeah, so if you throw past another character, that would be counted as half cover. So there's a +2 for the spider. Being in the doorway and only being partially covered would also be considered cover as well, but it won't make any difference because we got a 22. Do you know what I mean? Some people, when they're running the game, and if you're running the game for the very first time and you don't want to use cover rules, like there's so many people who just don't use the cover rules, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. Okay. So we've done that with our cleric. Our next character is a wizard. Probably going to be a bit awkward with our wizard now because they are currently webbed up. We could try to go for unwebbing ourselves, or we could go with, let's try to cast a spell. Wizard. We don't have any good places to stick a spell, unfortunately, and also being webbed up by a spider kind of reduces our movement a little bit. You know, we are restrained, which means we can't move around, and we also have disadvantage on whatever we do in terms of an attack. So that's kind of suck a lot. Okay, but they could try to dispose of the webs. Now, what sort of tools does a wizard have to contend with spider webs? Well, have a look at what you have. Well, Ray of Frost isn't going to do us any good. Shock and Grasp, probably not. You might want to decide if somebody has Firebolt, that they can use Firebolt on the webs that restrain them. But again, you would have disadvantage. That could be that could suck a little bit. Or we could just go with a Break Free. There's also Burning Hands. Burning Hands is probably a good tool to use when the spiders are in the right position. And this is probably not the right time to do that. And certainly we're not going to use Sleep because spiders have too many hit points to be trying to put them to sleep. So maybe our best choice is to simply try to cut ourselves free. Like there is the ability, it does actually state you can attack the webs, right? The armor class is only a 10 and it only has to take 5 points of damage. It's vulnerable to fire, but it's probably going to, either way, we're going to wind up with disadvantage on our attack. So probably the smartest way is actually to use the short sword and use the short sword to try to cut ourselves free. So that's what we will do, okay? Let's use the short sword that our wizard has to try and cut ourselves free. So the damage would be 2, plus whatever we roll on a 6-sided dice. Our attack modifier is a 4, because they're not that good with the short sword. Not as good as somebody else would normally do this. And we're going to roll dice See if we hit. We only have to hit the armor class of 10, so it's not that bad. It's not that hard. And see if we can get free of these webs. Okay, right, so that's not too bad. We're looking pretty good here. So we've got a 6 and a 4. That comes to 10. So we hit the webs. We managed to actually... Oh, we had disadvantage, didn't we? Almost forgot. Got a roll of disadvantage. You're restrained. Did we get worse? No. Thank God for that. Now, we're not using the dagger. Dagger does too little damage. And you've got a short sword, so use the short sword, people. Okay? All right, so even with disadvantage, taking the lowest result, which was the 6, not the 13, we still managed to hit the armor class of 10, okay? Roll your damage for your dice. I got a 5. Plus 2 is 7. And what did I say was the hit points of a web as we try to cut ourselves free? It's only got 5 hit points. So the webs are now cut free. So our wizard is now free to move. Now this might be a good time to decide I'm going to move myself further away, or I'm going to get behind some cover like a tree. So maybe move across the grass behind a tree and stand over there so that I don't wind up getting hit by another web. But I can now still move out and target something when I need to. Yep, that might be the better way for a wizard to deal with a situation like that. Okay, so that's our wizard. We've got our fighter. Our fighter is not bound up, so they can do something for sure. The firebolt cantrip, yeah, but we don't. This character doesn't have the firebolt cantrip. You could also allow somebody who has Ray of Frost to try and freeze the webs so they can break free. I mean, that would probably be more than suitable. I don't think it's the wrong way to go about doing things. Let's just get rid of this and let's do the fighter. Fighter. So what can the fighter do? Well, looking at our options here, moving our little sheet or board here into place, you will let me know if you're finding this boring and not helpful to you in the slightest. I am just trying to demonstrate some of the stuff. It's a bit of a handful trying to do all the characters in the monster all at once, but I tried doing this with the audience a little while ago last week and wasn't so easy, so I'm doing it myself. So I'm going to use it. We've got a great axe, right? We can actually try to break the rogue free so they can get away, or we can go straight for our not so friendly spider. I mean, that might be the way to go. What would you do? I mean, honestly, if you were here in a situation like this, would you go with let's break free the rogue so they don't have to do it, or cut them free? We could actually just try to cut the webs free with our axe. Okay, or you stop being jealous. Okay, I just do this because I run this program all the time. Trust me, it was expensive as hell to do it. It's really not practical at the slightest. What would you do? Would you use your great axe to sort of slice the webs away? Or would you go for, I'm going to just push my way through and attack the spider and step back? Or, heck, am I going to climb through and climb onto the spider? You could have the players climb onto the spider, which would be pretty fun. So what would we do? Let's do something crazy, shall we? We've only got one attack. We get a +5, and we're dealing with a 12-sided dice. Okay. And it's a 3. So 3 for our damage on our 12-sided dice, and our great axe does a 5. Right, there we go. Attack the giant spider to protect the rogue. Okay, I'd attack the spider to reduce the threat. So let's do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to have our fighter move past the rogue. Now you can't, there's nowhere to stand, even though this map should actually be twice the size, so there is actually space. But because it would be more fun, we're going to have the fighter clamber onto the spider to make their attack. Okay? For those of you who are thinking, what, that doesn't work. You can't do that. It's Dungeons and Dragons. You can always try everything. Do you know what I mean? Everything is possible. All right, so we've got a lot of people who had said different things, which is great. But unfortunately, it looks like we're definitely attacking the spider. So let's deal with that first. Now, here's your decision as a dungeon master. Do you think there should be a dice roll involved to clamber onto the spider. Should we have to make a acrobatics or an athletics check to clamber onto the spider? Would that be sensible? Look, I know some people are going to say, it should be acrobatics. Or I'm going to say, why not just say it's either one? So we'll do an athletics check, see if they can clamber onto the spider. How difficult do you think it would be to clamber onto the spider, people? Let's make it a medium check. Not a 10, you know how I feel about 10s. Let's make it a medium check. So I have to get at least a 15. That's what we're aiming for. Okay, the modifier for clambering onto this thing using athletics is a 5. So we have to roll at least a 10 to clamber onto the space with the spider and be successful in doing so. Okay? All right. No, I failed it. Look, that's a 1. 1 and a 5, that's 6. So we're just going to say we're not actually on the spider, we're just beside the spider. Remember, this space is actually supposed to be larger than it actually is. So we didn't succeed in that. We clambered over here. Maybe we fell over and had to get back up again. One of those. Maybe we didn't. It's up to you. You decide. It doesn't matter. All right, now, let's make an attack. We've got our fighter ready in position. So I roll a 20-sided dice. We're adding the 5 for the great axe. DC 15 is a medium difficulty. If you feel it should be higher, then make it higher. Okay, I got a 14. 14 and 5 equals 19. So 19 is greater than equal to the spider's actual armor class. If you're dealing with an armor class, the armor class of any kind of spider, it's only got a 14, so it's going to strike. Okay? I am renowned for rolling 1s and 2s. So what we're going to do, now that we've done that, we're now going to roll our damage. It's a 12-sided dice for the great axe, and we add the 3 because that's the strength modifier for our fighter. I rolled a 9. Okay. 9. And that there is a total of 12 points of damage. 12. Spiders have 26 hit points. But that thing is been hurt pretty badly. You now, as a dungeon master, have to decide, would the spider hang around to keep fighting, or will it bug off? And to do so, you can certainly use the disengage action on its turn. That would be totally sensible. Like, you know, when your turn runs around, provided the spider's still alive, it's taken 12 hit points, and it's got 26 hit points, so it's now got 14 hit points. Yeah? I'm not going to run through this entire counter from get-go from start to beginning, okay? What instead I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to get rid of the spiders, because now I want to actually show you the blights. But before I go and show you the blights and a fight that would take place with the blights, I think what would be really sensible is to take a break. So 5-minute break for me, 5-minute break for you, maybe a little less, just depends on how things go. I usually take a break in between, and I do need to take a break, so I will. And then we'll come back and we'll see what does a fight look like between blights. 5 minutes. Okay, we're coming back. As I promised before, we're going to go through the process of fighting some blights, because that would be kind of fun, I think. Now, rather than rolling initiative for every single player character and then the monster, I'm not going to do that. Okay? The only thing that I'm going to roll for when we deal with a fight with them is going to be the dungeon master. But again, what we'll do is we'll use the stealth check to see, are these blights going to hide themselves? Because they're probably going to try to hide themselves, right? So we'll go with the blight stealth check. That's this thing here, which I'm about to roll. Let's move that over here. As the players head over into the new location, will they notice that there are blights in this location as they're looking? Will they sniff them out? Will they hear their movements? Okay. All right. Let me just find the blight monster. Okay, twig blight, here we go. Okay, so twig blight's hiding this location. We have more than one here. There's 6 of these things. The reason I wanted to do this location is because there are so many of them. There's 3 here, there's 3 here. Okay, and given that, let's show you what that looks like if they make a stealth check. Yep, and we have our numbers to compare. We could use passive perception. I'm going to use passive perception in this case. Obviously, you wouldn't narrate the situation. There is a section that talks about narrating. There's no point in me reading out the narration section. Let's just show you what it's going to look like, because it's the math side of things that you guys are probably going to struggle with the most. Okay. Okay. So once we've got that all in place, we're going to make a check. What does that look like? Well, we look at the stealth modifier for our spider, our twig blight. Sorry. We only do 1. We don't roll for every single one, okay? And the stealth is actually listed as a 3. So this is supposed to be an ambush monster. Not a very good one, but it is. So 3, and we roll a 20-sided dice to see what we get. I rolled a 2, so really bad. Got 5. 5, and you compare it with the passive perception of the wizard. We've got 14, so the wizard sees them. Rogue will notice them with a 10. The cleric will notice with 13, and the fighter with a 14. Okay, if we were running them at level 1, it would be the following numbers for those pre-made characters: 13, 10, 13, and 13 for the fighter passive perceptions. So, sorry, blights do not succeed in doing that effectively. Again, you could use a passive check. You go 3 plus 10 would be 13, which still wouldn't probably hide you from every single one of them, but it would hide you from some of them. And so let's assume that the player characters decide they're going to wind up fighting. They don't want to negotiate. They don't throw at them some food. This is the opportunity when you notice them. It's like, try and, if you know how to speak with plants, by all means. Nothing worse for a dungeon master than trying to speak with plants. Do you know what I mean? Really, the worst thing under the sun. But I know some people like to do that. So initiative. I'm only going to roll initiative for the spider, for the blights. And all the player characters' initiatives from last time, I'm going to keep them exactly as they were. Okay? So what is the initiative for a twig blight? You won't find it again, as I said, on the stat block. The number you're looking for is the dexterity modifier, the small number in the brackets. So it's a 1 plus whatever I roll on a 20-sided dice. Okay? I get a 4. 1 and 4 equals 5. So that's pretty bad. It's not a great number. So 5 is the number we're dealing with. So if we go back to our main board, if I can get this out of the way, shuffle a few things around so you can actually see what's going on. Okay. These are our numbers. We got a 5. 5 is less than everything else. That's what the blights are going to get. So that means we take our DM and we put our DM all the way down the bottom here. They're going to be last. Exactly last. This has happened to me so many times where the blights have rolled so badly, they've gone to go last. All the player characters go first. Can you see a problem starting to develop here when a creature doesn't get surprise when it really needs to, and then suddenly you roll really bad on initiative? I don't know about you, but when this happens, I always know that my monsters are probably going to get trounced. This is actually pretty standard for a blight. So, let's go back to our scene. Our first character will be the rogue. So let's roll up what the rogue is going to do. I want you to tell me now, what do you think the rogue should do? Okay, there's some blights, they're moving around. What would you have your rogue do? Yeah. Okay, so I'm waiting for people to tell me what they're going to do. If you don't tell me what to do, I'm just going to have the rogue do something. Okay, the rogue is going first, won't get sneak attack again because there's nobody within 5 feet. The blights know that they're there. If you want your characters to move around, or the characters want to move around stealthily and quietly, then by all means start using stealth checks. Then there's a chance that you might get surprised. But won't get our sneak attack. Let's make a bow attack. I think that's probably the most sensible thing to do, which is going to be a 5. We're going to use a 6-sided dice for our damage. So our damage is the 3. Our 5 is to hit. Roll your 20-sided dice for your attack. Now, if I move my my rogue around, I can into a different situation or position. I can line one up, right? Even here, they would have cover, being behind the wall, but you can still see them, just a little bit of them. You only have to be able to line it up a little bit, okay? As long as you've got a reasonable line of bearing on it, that's good enough. Through this little gap here. Yep. So we'll make our attack. I'm going to count this as being a +2 to cover for the creature, even trying to shoot through here. Yep. Which is fine. I'll do that calculation in a second. Roll your 20-sided dice. I rolled a 5. Modifiers 5, dice 5, 10. Is that high enough to hit the armor class of a Twig Blight? Twig Blight's got an armor class of 13. And at this point with the cover, I'm going to count it as a 15. I've got to add 2 for the cover, right? So, unfortunately, our rogue misses. Okay, next. Cleric. What should our cleric do? What sort of options does the cleric have, and what would you have your cleric do in this situation? Yeah? Do we cast a spell? Do we make an attack? Should we just move up with our warhammer and just try to bludgeon something to death? Like, is that the best way? Should we use Sacred Flame? Or are we going to look at a different option? Should we pull out, as I said, the torch and just wave our torch around? Which you could do if you wanted to. Yeah? Okay. So let's assume that we don't do anything clever and fancy like we probably should. And we're just going to go, I'm going to move up into this location and make an attack against one of these creatures. Yep. So we'll go 1, so that'll be 10, 20, each square is 10 feet. And I can attack either one of these through the space here. Yep. We'll target this one. We didn't hit it last time. That's all right. We've got a +4 for our hammer. That's to hit. And we're dealing with damage, which is a D8 +2. So we get rid of that one. Find the 8-sided dice, the one that has an 8 on it. Definitely flames if they got them. So you would go with Sacred Flame, which you could. Yep, good to know. At least somebody mentioned something. Nobody needs healing. Nobody's taken any damage. Okay, so cleric is going to use the hammer. I got a 15. Plus 4. That's 19 to hit. Now, even if I consider this here cover, even when melee, even if I consider it to apply cover, which I could if I want to, and that's perfectly reasonable, the armor class of the Blight is only 13. So even if I add a plus 2, it would only be 15. So we're still successful. The cleric smack it with its hammer. We roll the 8-sided dice to do the damage. When you get your players to roll dice, please get them to roll the 20-sided dice and the damage dice at the same time. I got a 5. 5 plus 2 equals 7. How many hit points does a Blight have? Blights have 4 hit points. So it's dead. Dead. That thing is dead. It's gone. Okay? This is the problem. As soon as you hit a Blight, they almost always die and perish. Like they just can't do anything. Now they do also have a feature called motionless and indistinguishable by dead shrub. But if you decided that they're not staying still and they're moving around and you're still trying to stealth, then you'd use stealth and passive perception. If you decide to use the false appearance before this battle begins or before this encounter begins, then I wouldn't even have any kind of check being made whatsoever. I wouldn't bother with a passive check or an active check. If you're going to have them just standing perfectly still, you don't need to worry about having any kind of contest taking place with your dice rolls, okay? Because that's the nature of false appearance. It's like slapping it. Yeah, you crushed it. It's gone. It didn't stand up to that. But we're not finished, because now it's the wizard's turn. Are we starting to see a problem here? Let's move on through. 10, 20. I can see through here this blight. Now I could go crazy with my my wizard, and I could decide, well, I know what I'll do. I'll cast magic missile, and it will definitely kill it for sure. How's it going, hands of 8? How are you doing? Hello, Spirit Wolf. How are you doing? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cast a spell. We've got a wizard spell here. It's called Ray of Frost, and we'll cast that. Okay? So wizard's time. Yeah, we'll rub that out, and we'll do the wizard. Wizard. Okay, so what is our attack bonus for our wizard? Well, it's a first level character. It's one of the pre-mades, so it's only a 5 to hit for Ray of Frost. And Ray of Frost does do a lot of damage. It's pretty minimal in terms of the amount of damage you do with Ray of Frost. 20-sided dice. Oh, it's cooking in my office, people. Absolutely cooking. So this is the Ray of Frost spell. So I'll roll to hit. Don't have to worry about disadvantage, but there will be some cover potentially. Or will we say there is no cover? Because it's standing in the open here. There's a bush here. We're going to give it a +2 to cover. How's that sound? We don't have advantage. We roll. I rolled a 2. My God, do I roll bad? 2 and 5 is 7. So we're definitely going to miss the armor class of our blight, because it's got an armor class of 14, which is now a 16, I think it is. Is it 14 to 16? No, it's 13, so it's going to be a 15. So armor class was 15. So we don't succeed. Wizard misses with Ray of Frost. Okay, next one. Fighter. Blights haven't had a chance to do anything yet. One is already down. First round. Fighter. Here we go. Remember we had that great huge, the great axe that we had before that we were using? Well, we can do that for sure. And that's what we're definitely going to use. We'll use the great axe to strike it. Yeah, my aim is really bad. I'm not very good at aiming. I always struggle. I don't know what it is. It's like the dice I'm cursed. Every time I'm a dungeon master and I have to roll dice, I think that's part of the reason why my players like it when I dungeon master, is because I suck at dice. Hence everything seems to be too easy. Okay, Right, so to hit, it's a 5. The damage is a 3 modifier. Okay. Maybe you guys should be rolling the dice rather than me. Who knows? Okay, so our fighter can move through this space. That would be 10 feet, but it's now 20 feet because there's somebody in it. Okay? Or would we add 15, something like that. And anyways, there's enough distance to get through to be able to get at that one right there. Okay? Protect the wizard. Roll your 20-sided dice to roll for your great axe attack. I rolled a 5. Man, I suck at this. 5. Got a 10. 10 total. 5 and 5 is 10. Well, that's definitely not going to hit the armor class of this little fella because he's got an armor class of 13. So I miss. That's all of the player characters in the first round. It's now the Dungeon Master's turn. It's at this point you have to decide, are you going to engage all of the blights? One is already dead. Or are you going to have them bug out? It's up to you. I'm going to suggest let's continue and see what happens if blights make attacks, because blights don't really do very much. Like if you start seeing what happens with a blight, twig blight, you'll almost feel like you were wasting your time doing this, just because the amount of damage output. I mean, yes, I suppose it reduces a few of their resources if you manage to get through, but there's no guarantee that you will. The only thing they do is they have a +3 with their claw. Okay, and they have a reach of 5 feet, and they do, on average, 3 points of damage, which is a 4-sided dice for damage, and you add 1. That's literally all it is, +1 to that thing. So it's not a lot. So we're going to make some blights move around, and then we'll make some attacks. Okay. I'm not a hot roller at all, mate. I'm suck it. So we'll leave that blight there. That blight's where it needs to be. And this blight will move out now through this space here. So we're going to go 10, 20, 30. And they move relatively quickly, about the same speed as your player characters. No, 20 feet. So that's 30. So we're going to have to dash 40. That's all it can do. We'll do another one. 10, 20, 10, 20. So it dashes. This will dash as well. 10, 20, 30. Or we can go the other way. We can go the other way. 30, 40. More. So they've moved. That's all they can do. They've moved, they're dashed. But these two monsters get to attack. So you get to at least see 2 of them attack the player characters before we get into round 2. The guidance will not help on my dice rolling. So Twig Blight's got a +3. Now I would suggest, again, when you're doing this, is to roll both of your attacks at the same time. I'm going to target all of them onto the fighter. Okay, we're not rolling with advantage. I'm rolling for both of those. Okay, they only get 1 attack. Okay, so 1 is the 3. So 3 and 3 equals 6. That's definitely not going to hit the armor class of our fighter. I believe our fighter's got a much higher armor class than that, sitting at about 17. Yes, it is 17. So we fail that one. So one of them tries to strike it, claw it, not successful. Get rid of that. But we also rolled a 14 for the second attack on the other blight, so that comes to a 17. So we do hit this time. We actually strike it. Wow. Okay. Let's move this dice out of the way. See, this is the caltrop. This is the thing. Do not drop it on the ground and step on it. You'll hurt yourself a lot. Okay. Roll this and add a 1. I rolled a 1. Not surprising. And we do 2 points of damage to our fighter, who has potentially got a bucket load of hit points when they finally get through here. So it's not going to do a lot of damage. On average, you're going to be doing about 3 points of damage for every blow you make. Okay? And because your attack modifier for your blight is only a 3, plus whatever you roll on the 20-sided dice, you're going to miss most of the time. Because you're going to have to at least be rolling more than a 10. Quite a bit more than a 10 to actually hit most of the armor classes that they have. For the lightly armored ones, such as our wizard and even I think it's the rogue, you're still going to be having to roll at least 11 or 12. Yeah, maybe even more. And the more heavily armored ones, the cleric and the fighter, you're probably going to find yourself in a situation where when you make your attack roll for hitting them, because you're only getting a +3, what are you rolling to really to hit them? Well, I think the cleric's got an 18 for their armor class, and the fighter's got a 17. So we're really looking at roughly, you've got to roll 14 or more to hit the fighter, or a 15 or more to hit the cleric. So it's not that great. Do you know what I mean? It's frankly, this is why I don't like these monsters. And even if they were here facing these creatures at level 1 characters can probably deal with blights without too much trouble. You know, they just do so little damage. I mean, you could say, okay, what if I crit? You're still not doing that much damage. Even the wizard would still probably be alive. Do you know what I mean? Okay. I think that is enough demonstration for today. Frankly, I've almost lost my voice. I am tired as people, but I have at least demonstrated some of the different aspects of this location. Now, I know what you're saying, well, Fred, what about the dragon fight? Would that not be different? Yes, it certainly would be. I have demonstrated it before. Nobody insisted that I do that demonstration, so I haven't done it again. I think it was probably more important for you to see the blight attack, because it's one of those monsters, and frankly, I think you should just eliminate, like, just ditch it. Like, just don't have them there at all. Have a whole lot of empty locations without battles. I know it makes for a lot of fun for players to smash through stuff, but it's an awful lot of work for a dungeon master to find themselves having to do initiative, contend with the stealth checks, read out descriptions, describe what the monsters are doing, all that sort of stuff. I haven't done any of that. I've just done all the mathematics sides of things, because I figured that's what a lot of you are looking for if you're starting out. Okay? But blights really aren't a real threat. The spiders might have taken them a little while to get through, but I don't think they're going to be super problematic. At level 1, they would be dangerous. At higher levels, not really. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, level 3, probably not a big deal. If you've got 4 characters, you should be alright with 2 spiders. And the spiders aren't going to stick around until they're completely destroyed. You know, as soon as they start to get a little bit hurt, they're probably going to run away. Okay. No, I haven't been keeping a really close eye on the chat. But I'm hoping that I have answered all the questions that I need for today. Now, for those of you who are unaware of how this channel works, before I leave, tomorrow we have Dungeon Master Preparation, where we are going to create some non-player characters, or at least one non-player character. And then, of course, that non-player character will go on to Patreon for those of you who are patrons. But it's to actually get you involved. You will help me build that. It's a far more interactive thing. I take all of your ideas, I incorporate it into the NPC. That's how we do them, okay? That's tomorrow. The day after that, it is going to be Dungeons & Dragons, Monster Lore, and Workshop. This is where I'm going to be talking about the Manticore. I will be giving you the basics around the Manticore, a bit of the history, but not a lot. How to use it in combat, habitat and society, ecology, the biology of the Manticore, which you probably won't find anywhere, and I will be including that in that presentation. And we will also do how to incorporate it into your adventures and how to defeat it, like some advice for your players. So that is the Manticore, and after the presentation, the workshop is where we actually take a stat block and we fix it, or we build a completely new one. That's what it is for. It's basically, it's kind of an extension of Dungeon Master Preparation, but AJ said it's time to do Monster Lore, and so I have agreed he's probably right. And I'm a lot happier doing that. So we've got that. The day after that, we're doing the Fighter, beginner character creation for the Fighter in Dungeons & Dragons. I'll go over the basics of how to do that, some advice around building fighters, and we'll build a fighter in D&D Beyond. And the day after that, we're doing the basics for basic combat mechanics, where I will give you a presentation, do some demonstration, answer your questions. And then the day after that, there's a lot of live streams, people. I will be reviewing Monsters of the Multiverse. I know everybody has already reviewed it, but I know some people want me to actually say something about it, so I will. Hand of 8, I actually did already mention what I would replace the blights with. Frankly, I think depending on how many blights there are, I would go replace them with a vine blight, a shambling mound. If you have like 6 blights in an area, replace it with the shambling mound if they're about level 4 or 5. Awakened tree or the woodwoad. Those are probably better and more interesting monsters than the twig blight, in my opinion. Do you know what I mean? But if you want something that's thematic and fits the idea of it being like, foresty, that's why I selected those monsters. They are sort of extensions of the twig blight, in my opinion. Okay, so that is everything that I need to say with regard to this stream. So let us go out on a good note. I just want to say thank you to everybody who has participated and watched my live stream. I hope that you got something out of it today. I want to thank all my patrons who support me on Patreon. I do appreciate it. They are the ones who make sure that this program continues, and you watching this program, watching the live streams and watching the replays and the edited videos ensures that things continue. But it's really important, if you haven't figured it out, this channel is all about live, okay? That's what I'm trying to sell you. Okay, I'm trying to get you involved, and live is where it's at for me. And so I'm hoping that you got a good experience today. So thank you to everybody who's been watching all my stuff. Now, wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the night, the afternoon, or the wee early morning, please look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. Hello, Todd. Todd is also a patron.